Welcome to another Founder Wisdom Pod AI edition. We have Mark Evgenev with us. He is founder of desync.ai. He's a coach and a judge at Alchemist Accelerator. Young guy, ambitious guy. I really enjoyed talking with him and appreciate his brain, how he thinks about the present and the future. Going to talk about AIs today, chatbots, the future of GPTs, and the tool that he's building to help people find better, for VC and analysts to find better data, that is, to make better investment decisions. So this podcast is brought to you by podpire.com if you want to start your scale podcast. It's also brought by Quality of Mind if you want to hack your brain and get your hands on the best nootropic in the market. I personally use it as an entrepreneur for focus, memory, and drive. So you can find it on neurohacker.com. I use the caffeinated version, but there's also a non-caffeine version. Mark, welcome to the pod. Tell me a bit more about yourself and what you're up to nowadays.
Sure. So thank you for having me. My name's Mark. Originally, I wasn't born in the States. I was born in Russia, then I moved to London. Then I decided to move to the States for college. So I got Notre Dame, about to essentially finish it. I have one semester left to go. I've been building startups for the last 3 years. Started in ed tech, did 5 different startups in ed tech, looking at different models, then went to med tech for a year, where I did insulin tracking and carbon dioxide emissions for people through a app. And last but not least, I ended up in AI tech after the last ed tech kind of didn't go anywhere. Started helping founders fundraise, realized that founders didn't really have enough money or willingness to pay for something like that due to ego clashes and a couple other things, but ended up bringing on a new partner this January. And within 3 months, 20,000 lines of code, 6 different MVPs, about too many demos, and 200 plus meetings with different analysts and VCs. We think that we have something that will help a lot of analysts. A lot of analysts today have this very manual, granular process of sourcing deals that when everybody started complaining about it, it just became this trend where all the friends I have who are in different internships started saying, oh yeah, like they put us in a room, they make us use LinkedIn Sales Nav for hours every single week to find random startups, and we judge them based on quality of their webpage and quality of their one-liner. So they didn't even look at team competition or anything that's remotely close to what they should be looking at. As a result, we came up with this tool coming out very, very soon. We're in closed beta right now, but within essentially one click of a button, you'll get full analysis of the entire team, all their emails. You'll get analysis of the competition, top 20, 30 competitors, which we then actually start comparing based on other metrics, so like revenue, size, last funding round, last round that they raised in, and a ton more metrics that analysts can sort of toggle on and off. Doing this just gives you a bigger full view of the company, so you can spend more time actually looking at companies you care about and hopefully evaluating them to a higher degree. The goal is to help reduce the amount of clicks and control C's, control V's an analyst does. So, yeah.
What are your ambitions in life? Must guess you've spent some time thinking about where you want to go and what you want to accomplish. Like, what do you want to get done in this life of yours?
I think that's a tough question. When I first raised funding for the medtech startup, everything was kind of more about cash. But after a year of sort of not having a complete round, it sort of fell apart essentially. And as a result, I came to sort of conclusion of like, if I look for money, it's not really going to be serious or really go anywhere. So I started to measure, I guess, my success or my happiness on a different metric. I mentor a lot of people, about 20 mentees around the States, and I hope that any work that I do helps others. So the more people that are impacted by my work, who can then impact others by their work, and actually just bring and make this world a bit more happier. Uh, that's all I want, to be honest. And it doesn't matter how much money I have in the bank. Even if I'm living off like, I know, 30, 40K a year, I'll go to another country and live it out there because we can work online, but just sort of making other people happy, smile more, and having a positive impact. I think that's the goal for me, no matter what startup I do.
And why pick the VC vertical or market analyst vertical from the get-go? What brought you to that thesis?
Well, we first started working with startups, but since startups weren't able to pay and there was a lot of issues there where we were initially doing just the outreach for them and we're doing the decks, suddenly it's like I had to do the data rooms. I had to look at their financial models, and it just got so much work for so little cash that it wasn't worth it. So when we flipped them all into VCs and seeing if VCs would pay for something like this, we realized that not only were they already paying for tools that were like 10 times more expensive, example, Harmonic, it's like 20 grand a year. Um, so for us, once we realized that they're paying, they want this thing to grow, and then we started looking at their solutions. We were appalled what we saw. Like we saw like some VCs putting all their fund data into OpenAI and saying, "Hey, OpenAI, here is the live data of every single company that we're looking at, every single reason why we invest in the company, and just have it all for free," which both me and my co-founder think is a very interesting way to invest. Um, so having said that, um, what we're starting to build right now has a couple of steps. The first step is for the analysts, because those are like my peers, the 21, 22-year-olds who just got into VC, first, second internship. And they're essentially being used as these data labelers or data grabbers for startups, where they're just forced to essentially like, hey, find a startup that's investable. Good luck. And they're giving almost no directions. They have to develop their own frameworks for it, which most of the time doesn't really work. With the amount of complaints, with the amount of like stuff that happens, it really got to me at some point where in one day I had like 10, 15 different conversations with people who all said the same thing. And I love the VC sort of history. I love everything that was built in Silicon Valley and over the last like 50, 60 years. And I think it's a shame that other people don't get to experience this kind of like passion for this like industry. So
What have you learned from your time in Russia, and I saw Uzbekistan as well, like in on your LinkedIn, like yeah, what's different between these markets?
oh God. So I've worked in Zimbabwe, Uzbekistan, Israel, Russia, UK, US, and Dubai. So I've been to, I think, just over 30 countries at this point. Um, but with the work that I did in those countries, it's very strange, but I also do love it. So two main concepts to think about is one's leapfrog and tech adoption. So the way that they're able to adopt the best tech that comes from everywhere around the world. So for example, Uzbekistan, instead of having an app store because nobody can afford iPhones there, what they did is they built an entire ecosystem within Telegram. And by that, I mean, you can order food through Telegram, through different bots. Every single restaurant has a Telegram integration. You can order like Amazon there. You have a card that's saved there, and you have an entire thing that they built with zero infrastructure, which they got as an inspiration from WhatsApp that's used in Africa for the same, literally the same purposes. You pay salaries through WhatsApp in Africa. And that's kind of been inspired by the whole WeChat movement in China. So that's the first one. The second one is the amount of white space that's available there, especially in the Middle East. So for me, one thing I'm considering is whether or not to move to Dubai within the next 6 to 12 months. And it's primarily for the reason that it's safe. It has Sharia law, so it's very, it's an interesting way, I guess, to live by, but it's also so different from what I'm used to that I actually really like it. And it just lowers all the distractions by a lot. And I guess last but not least, it's just the amount of funding that they're doing into infrastructure, where they're letting founders build, they're letting founders flourish, and they're really, and because their population is really similar across the Middle East, because they're all Muslim, they all have the same sets of values. You actually have a denser, I guess, population of people who are the same. So you can build, if you build one product and a majority of them like it in the UAE, for example, most likely a lot of them will like it in Saudi, and so on and so forth. Compared to America, if you build a product for someone who's from the Midwest, they might love it, but someone from California might really hate it. So here there's such disparity of people and their wants and needs, whilst in the Middle East, it's very much similar across the board.
Very interesting. What are your top goals this year? What do you want to focus your time on?
Oof, okay. Top goals, I guess. Yes, there's three, I guess, main goals. From the professional standpoint and decent standpoint, I want to get to the point where we're building our own models and fine-tuning some of the higher level models to generate about ideally 25K MRR. That would make me very sort of happy there. Again, we started this in January, so doing this in a year for me would be like a big milestone. Second one is mentorship wise, I'm on track right now where every single one of my mentees has so far this year raised cash or doubled their revenue or gone to the accelerated program. So I have another three that I'm working with right now. So I'll know soon whether or not they did that. And then I guess for personal stuff is finally relax for a second and go on a little holiday and see my family sometime in June, July, or even August, because I haven't seen them in over 8 to 10 months. So I mean, that's the basic goals.
Right. What challenges are you facing in your startup? We talked last time about extinguishing fires and yeah, just hustling the shit out of yourself. And yeah, it's quite hard. So tell us about that and how you're going through all of that.
I think startups are overglorified in the media. I can say that for this for certain. It's just when you're building a startup, you're either all in or you're not doing, or you're not in at all. And I think the first 3 years of me building startups, that was something where I wasn't all in. And since I wasn't all in, I think it's natural that they failed. Um, Having said that, building a startup is hard, dude. Like, I know you've spoken to a lot of founders, and I'm not sure how many of people actually admit it, but when they look at the first steps and look to where they came now, it's like you really have to like climb Everest to build something meaningful that people like. And the amount of knowledge you have to consume to even do something is unimaginable. Like in 3 years, I went from not being able to code to like essentially learning multiple languages for CS, multiple no-code tools. I learned how to prompt with emojis for GPT. I learned how to like do sales properly. If I took a recording of my first ever sales call and the ones I have now, it's light and day. Um, in terms of it being hard, I'm a student, so I have to balance not going to class with a full-time startup. And I mean, my average weekly is about 100-hour work weeks for the last at least 8 months. So that's been really hell.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that most people forget about how hard it was. And I think the best humans on this planet Earth, they have really selective memories, right? I just booked a 100-kilometer run in 88% humidity and heat in Puerto Vallarta. And I obviously forgot about my last 80 kilometer, how painful it was to go uphill and downhill, completely destroyed my quads and, like had to take shit in the woods because my stomach wasn't cooperating. So it was hell. And I think, when I think about the 80-kilometer, these details, my brain totally like deleted them. It says like, oh, remember the ending when you were with your buddy and family and listening to that music was amazing. So I think we're convincing ourselves, obviously, that this shit is easy, but It's very hard. You mentioned sleepless nights, and crunching, yeah, like all-nighters and so forth. I had my businesses burning many times. Sometimes even employees trying to actively destroy it. Right. The ultimate irony: people that you've taken care of, you've paid, and they try to destroy you afterwards. So yeah, it is hard. It is very tricky to start a business. So what do you do when it gets hard? Like, what are your mental hacks or systems that you use uh to utilize when it gets very hard on you?
So I guess I'll preface it with this. At the age of 21, I have gray hair. So it's like sometimes I look at myself in the mirror and just see the like hints of gray coming out, and I'm like, oh God, this is really bad. But when it gets hard, it's I think it gets easier the more you fail, which is strange because founders hate to fail. It's like you're never taught to fail in school. You're never taught to go to market, test a product, and have it come back as a 1 out of 5 across 30 people. Um, and I think knowing how to fail and failing often, it kind of numbs this idea of like, oh, everything has to be perfect. Um, I think across the years, every single time, if I look at the first MVP I ever launched, it took a year. Last MVP took a week. So we learned from like literally in 3 years, we went from like me trying to build something with a team to just saying, fuck it, I'm gonna do it myself. Um, so I think you learn a lot of this thing that's either you're gonna do it or nobody's gonna do it, which is a really powerful framework that I personally like do. It's like do or die. And if this shit fails, it's gonna be because of it's not gonna be because of me. And I'll do everything to sort of get it to a point where it's like can't fail. Um, in terms of offensive stuff, when like people try to destroy my business, or I mean, I've had people destroy my business. I think it gets easier as time goes on. But the current framework is they can try. Um, and I would love to see them try. Because I think one thing I really neglected was the role of the customer in the first and multiple first iterations. So right now I have all customers in speed dial. They all talk with me literally. In our beta, we have 50 plus analysts. I speak with every single one of them at least once or one, like every 1 week or every 1.5 weeks to maintain that relationship, make sure that they're happy, look at their current deals, see how they're actually doing it. I've walked through this exercise of how do you source deals with every single one of those 50 people. So for me, just that relationship, I don't think it can be destroyed by anyone outside. Um,
Talking about, yeah, these employees investing their time into trying to destroy what you have and so forth. Usually they're not the smartest, right? So they're not to be feared much because engaging in such petty wars is pretty useless. But yeah, like and on our side, I think we have like tools like AI to sort of win these war out of the context of like a war against another human, but in the context of AIs vs humans. How do you see this planning out? Like me having an army of AI agents competing with someone that is still doing things the old school way.
I'm gonna tell you right now, that's my daily. I have 600 bots on standby across multiple different functionalities, from life coaches to literal business model ideators to browsing bots that source information for me. Well, I just like literally, I can go to sleep, I can wake up, I can have a uh, file that's gigabytes in size of just stuff that I'm interested in to read over. So I think if you're not using AI, you're going to get left behind. That's the first one. The second one, I think, is learning how to build AI tools outside of OpenAI is going to be so important in the next coming months. With GPT-5 coming out, I think a lot of startups are going to die. A lot of not only AI startups, but a lot of conventional startups are also going to die. So I think being prepared for that and not self-deluding yourself into thinking that everything's going to be all right and everything's going to be the same, because reality is it's never going to be the same. A lot of my peers are thinking that they're going to all these firms and they're going to be treated well there for the next 5 years. The reality is they're probably going to get laid off within the next two, because AI is better than an average person on so many different benchmarks.
Very much agree with that. What would that mean for the market and your company? How will you actually adapt to that? Will you go very low on employees, try to go all in agents, build your own agents? How will you adapt to this new AI reality, this new AI age?
I think AI has two main components. The first one being it's a game of data, um, where the more data you collect now, the easier it'll be for you to build a proprietary moat within the next 6 months. Because after that, you're going to have laws come in, and then you won't be able to collect data as easily. So what we're doing right now, 24/7, is collecting as much data as possible to then give us something that we can either sell, give us something that's valuable, and give us something that only we have. Part one. Part two of this is then the goal is to build a unicorn with less than 5 people. Like in my head, that's like one of the impossible goals I've set for what I want these things to become. And then the other one was when it comes, like one of the crazy ideas we had when we first started desync for VC, there's 50,000 essentially VC analysts, investors, partners, LPs in the States. I mean, if we were to remove, let's say, half of them, every single one of them has a salary of about 70, 80K a year, who are analysts. You do the math, how much you're actually saving for the venture industry. It's a lot of money. So the crazy thought we had is, wouldn't it be real cool to see how people actually, what kind of startups they're interested in, collect that data, figure out what startups we're interested in and where we can place our bets, to then build a model that would replace the need of an analyst and partner and not tell anyone about it, and see how that model would actually invest into the market. And nobody should know that it's AI based until like 2 years later, when it's like, if it goes well. So I think that's our craziest idea of how we're going to try and adapt to the change.
Fascinating. Well, Mark, thanks so much for the value and the different frameworks you brought to us today. Where can people find out more about you?
Right now, I'm actually building the website for Desync, so that's coming up soon. But my LinkedIn is always a good spot. I can always link it in the chat. So very happy to connect with anyone. And if anyone's building using open source models, please let us know. We're always happy to engage with people, especially like those who are building with open source, because that's like a whole different level of startups that we're just seeing sort of evolve right now.